Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Monday, July 5th, and I hope everyone had a fantastic 4th of July yesterday. But we're breaking down this nice little 9-gamer that we have over on DraftKings today. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to follow me over on social media or find me using the handles in the bottom corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, get access to some extra content and tools. Link is down below in the description for that. I got projections, optimizer, ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, the top stacks, and I do update everything throughout the day in the Discord community, so link is down below in the description for that. But I think that's it for the plugs. Without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we'll start with the pitchers, then move on to the bats. And up top, we have Brandon Woodruff at $10,400, and he is clearly our best pitcher of the slate. And when we have a pitcher that's clearly above everybody else on the slate, usually we just want to try to find a way to plug them in our lineups, and we'll get different elsewhere. And that is my plan today. If you're not playing Brandon Woodruff, I think you're probably doing it wrong. Yes, in tournaments, you can gain leverage by fading a guy that's going to have some massive ownership, but if you guys are playing cash games or single entry GPPs, I think you need to be starting with Brandon Woodruff. And the pricing this year, DraftKings is making it way too easy to spend it for pitchers, so you should have absolutely zero problem fitting in Brandon Woodruff today. It's also a pretty good matchup versus the Mets, and getting out of Milwaukee, I guess it's a slight boost for him, but nothing too crazy here. But the Mets lineup, outside of a few guys, doesn't really concern me too much, and Woodruff has just been a fantastic pitcher this season. Typically works pretty deep into the game, around 100 pitches per game. ERA is below 2 still, xFIP's right around 2.9, SIERA at 3.1, still fantastic numbers. Over a 31% carry, doesn't really walk too many guys, and pretty much gives up zero power, less than a 100 ISO this season, only a 26% hard contact rate, and less than a homer per 9. Looking over at the Vegas stuff, only a 3.4 implied team total against him. He is a slight favorite here, and a 7.5K prop. So I'm definitely liking Brandon Woodruff. I think you should really try to find a way to fit him in the majority of your lineups tonight. Then after Brandon Woodruff, things get a little bit murky. We have a bunch of potential SP2 options here that I'm not overly confident in, but they do grade out fine relative to their price points. So we have Joe Musgrove here, $8,700. He'll be the best projection play of these SP2s that we have listed here. No implied team total out yet for Washington, but I will say it definitely helps that Kyle Schwarber should not be in the lineup because the guy's on an absolute tear. Plus Musgrove, if he's going to struggle versus anybody, it's more than likely going to be the lefty. So getting pretty much one of the hottest players in baseball, maybe besides Shohei Ohtani, out of a lineup is definitely going to be a big boost for Joe Musgrove. And he's below 9K here, and his numbers are fine this year. I know he struggled in his last start versus Cincinnati. At Cincinnati, definitely not a great place to pitch at, but his numbers overall have been pretty good this season now. And some of these numbers are going to get boosted from what he did earlier in the season when he was on absolute fire, but they're still overall fine. 2.6 ERA, 3.3 exit, 3.2 SIERA, 30% K rate, only a 6.2% walk rate. Doesn't give up a ton of power, only 126 ISO, and close to a 50% ground ball rate. Matchup versus Washington, again, like I said, maybe not my favorite matchup out there, but with no Kyle Schwarber, it's definitely going to help some things out for him. And he's only $8,700, so if you want to make him your SP2 tonight, I have no issue with that whatsoever. If I had to guess the team total for Washington, it's probably going to be mid to upper threes would be my guess. I'm not sure it'll be low fours. I mean, it could be, but my guess would be like the mid to upper threes for the team total for Washington. Plus, it's a pitcher-friendly park at Petco. And the San Diego Padres do have a pretty good matchup versus John Lester, so I think you should be able to pick up the win, which that 4-point bonus could go a long way at $8,700. Then if you're going to pivot off of Musgrove, I'd prefer Musgrove over Max Fried here, but Max Fried definitely gets a really soft matchup versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. Fried doesn't have quite the strikeout upside that Joe Musgrove has. He's only sitting at around 23% this season, plus his SIERA and xFIP are about a run higher than Joe Musgrove's, but he doesn't give him much power. And the matchup versus Pittsburgh, I mean, they're pretty bad versus left-handed pitching. Only a 129 team ISO, 81 WRC plus, 287 WOBA, but they don't strike out very much, which is why I'm kind of concerned for DFS purposes. Like, I think in real life he's going to have a good game today, but if he's not going to have a ton of strikeouts, I just feel like there's more strikeout upside for Joe Musgrove here. But very soft matchup versus Pittsburgh, only a 3.65 implied team total, pretty heavy favorite. The Braves have a team total well above 5 today, so as long as he can go the 5+ innings, he should be able to pick up the win, which again, like Joe Musgrove, that 4-point bonus could go a long way at his price point, so I think he's a fine option, but if I had to pick, as of right now, I do prefer Joe Musgrove over Max Fried. Then if you want a cheaper SP2, we have Tyler McGill, $7,200, pretty new young pitcher, so you never know what you're really going to get here, but it's a good matchup versus Milwaukee. He struck out 8 in his last game and threw 2 starts this season so far. It's only a 9-inning sample size, but he's got a 30% K rate, double-digit walk rate, but again, we're talking about small sample sizes here, 50% ground ball rate, over 11.5 Ks per 9. I like the strikeout upside here versus Milwaukee. I'm not really sure exactly what we're going to get out of McGill, but I like that price point. And the Brewers this season, they're striking out at a 25.8% clip to righties, 83 WRC plus, 291 WOBA, and a 298 OBP. They've definitely been better versus lefties this season. compared to righties. So at that price point, I think Tyler McGill is firmly in play. It's always kind of scary to roster new young pitchers because you never know. They could easily blow up, but I like that price point quite a bit and only a 4 implied team total against them. Probably won't pick up the win because I'm assuming the New York Mets will probably get mowed down by Brandon Woodruff, but at $7,200, you really can't ask for too much here, so I definitely think he's on our radar today. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the pitching, so let's move right over to the bats. It's a pretty fun bat slate today, lots of good offenses, and there's a lot of team totals here above 5 today. So start at top with Salvador Perez, $5,000, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball this season, batting over 280, close to a 240 ISO, gets a good matchup here versus Gutierrez from the Cincinnati Reds. And I wish they were on the road in Cincinnati playing in Great American Small Park. They'd probably have a team total above 5.5 here, but Gutierrez, not a very great pitcher. I mean, not a huge sample size on the guy, but I just can't imagine he's going to fare very well here versus the Royals, even though they're not the most exciting offense out there. Plus, the bullpen for the Reds isn't exactly that great. Looking at their team xFIP this season, it's up there at 4.55, and it's not quite like the Cardinals at 4.9 or the Colorado Rockies at 4.8, but it's still not that great of a bullpen. They do have some guys that can strike out some guys, but they will give up, plenty of power. And Salvador Perez, he's very expensive, but if the money for him, I think he's a fine option. But to be honest, your cash game catchers today are probably going to be Wilson Contreras and JT Realmuto. So they're playing in Wrigley today, and if you're brand new to MLB DFS and you don't know how Wrigley operates, when the wind is blowing out in Wrigley, it's one of those parks that's just a huge boost for bats, and when it's blowing in, it's a huge boost for pitching, just the way the park's constructed. But today, as of right now, of like 8 a.m. in the morning, the wind is projected to be blowing out around 15 miles per hour, which is a massive boost for the bats. So I'm going to like a lot of the odds of this game. So be prepared to see a lot of Chicago Cubs and Philadelphia Phillies in this video because they both have good matchups versus Matt Moore and Zach Davies, and they have team totals above 5. The Cubs close to 6 here, so I'm liking plenty of these pieces today. But Wilson Contreras should be batting leadoff here versus a lefty, and I mean, if that's the case, I would have a ton of interest in Wilson Contreras today. Matt Moore is not a very good pitcher, doesn't really get a lot of strikeouts, and he will give some power. And Wilson Contreras has plenty of power versus left-handed pitching. Team total at 5.9. Would not be surprised if that gets over 6 as the day progresses. So loving all the Chicago Cubs quite a bit. And JT Realmuto, $3,800. He has been struggling since returning from injury, but he's still batting around 280 this season with a 181 ISO, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. He's $1,000 cheaper than Contreras, so just kind of depends on how your roster construction is. Maybe if you go with the Brandon Woodruff, Joe Musgrove build, you have to get down to Realmuto, but maybe if you go Woodruff to McGill, you can get up to Wilson Contreras. Just going to depend on how your lineups look, but over a 5 implied team total here. Zach Davies can kind of be annoying to stack against sometimes, but it's not the greatest pitcher out there, not a big strikeout guy, and the wind blowing out is definitely a boost for the Phillies, so like pretty much every single piece of the offenses on both sides of the game here. They're dropping out of first base. Shohei Ohtani, $6,200. Do I love that it's a lefty-on-lefty matchup? No, but Ohtani actually has some kind of insane numbers versus left-handed pitching this season, and he's pretty much been the best player in baseball. I mean, he is at, 31 homers right now? I mean, he's on an insane pace as of right now, and he actually has had more power versus lefties this season compared to righties. He has a 390 ISO to lefties, and then looking to righties, he has a 365 ISO. Both numbers are insane. It's just kind of crazy. He has more of an ISO versus lefties than he does versus righties, but you can play him versus anybody. Pretty much the best player in baseball. Martin Perez, not a very good pitcher. They have a team total right around 5 today, and if you got the money for Ohtani, great. I'm not sure you're going to because he's very, very expensive. You could also play him in the outfield, but if you ever have enough money for Ohtani, it's not a question of whether you should play him. It's just a matter of just putting him in the lineup because, I mean, he's just an absolute freak. Dropping down to Rhys Hoskins, $5,300. Pretty expensive. Should be hitting kind of a bit lower in the order, but I like the power upside here versus Zach Davies. And again, I like all the Phillies. I like all the Cubs. Then Gavin Sheets, $2,600. We'll see where he's hitting in the lineup. I know recently he's been batting second. Earlier, he was batting around 7th, so not sure what we're going to get today, but decent matchup versus Bailey Ober. I know he was really chalky last time he pitched in the same exact matchup versus the White Sox. Did not end up going well whatsoever. I don't think he's going to pitch that bad again, but team total above 5 here, and Gavin Sheets has been producing so far, so if you just need a cheap first baseman or you can play him in the outfield, Gavin Sheets is viable, and I'd prefer if he was batting a little bit higher in the order, so we'll have to see on that. Then dropping out of second base, you could also play him in the outfield. We have Kike Hernandez, $4,600. He's been playing well. Okay matchup versus Jose Suarez. He has been fine this year, not really getting blown up or anything. Kike is facing a lefty. I will have some interest in. Their team total is above 5, and the Angels bullpen is really nothing great. So if Jose Suarez doesn't last too long, I definitely think it's going to be a boost for the Boston Red Sox. Jean Segura, $3,200. He's dirt cheap, hits high in the order on the Phillies. He's on the road, gets those guaranteed nothing at bats in Wrigley Field where the wind's blowing out. You can sign me up for that. Plus, he's been playing well this season. Obviously, not a guy with a lot of power, but he is batting above 330 this season. Then David Fletcher, $3,100. He's been producing lately. He was kind of cold to start the season, but he's batting around 290. Big contact guy, doesn't really get a lot of power, kind of similar to Segura. Not quite as good as Segura, but David Fletcher, $3,100. Team total close to 5. Don't hate that versus Martin Perez, who's just not that very good whatsoever. And then dropping out third base, Manny Machado, $5,400. He had a nice 4th of July. I believe he went double dawing yesterday. Gets a good matchup here versus the lefty John Lester, who's just not a very good pitcher at this point of his career. And we know Manny Machado can absolutely crush left-handed pitching, so if you got the money for him, I do think some of these righties on the Padres do make for a decent stack today. There's no team total out yet, but it's probably going to be above 5 versus John Lester. I would not be surprised about that. Chris Bryant, $4,800. He's going to be one of the top home run calls in the slate for me with the wind blowing out, going up against Matt Moore. Very pedestrian pitcher. Doesn't really generate a ton of strikeouts. And on the season, Chris Bryant batting .270 with a .245 ISO and has great power versus left-handed pitching. And he's also eligible at in the outfield. So Chris Bryant's going to be one of those guys who are probably going to try to jam in for cash games today because I imagine the ownership is going to be pretty darn high. Then Yandy Diaz, $3,800. Good matchup here versus Logan Allen. Very, very average pitcher at best. He got sent down for a little bit. And Yandy Diaz is not a big power guy, but he can get on base quite a bit. Like, he only has a .059 ISO this season and a .245 batting average, but he still has a .375 OBP. So the walks can be there. Should be leading off versus a lefty. I don't hate Yandy Diaz. Plus, he's playing his old team. I wish it was in Cleveland, but it's in Tampa Bay. But, you know, $300 not a bad price tag for Yandy Diaz. And then dropping down to shortstop, you have Tatis, $6,100, kind of similar to Ohtani. Like, if you have the money for the guy, you should play him because he's just one of the best players in baseball. He's got a .404 ISO this season, .438 WOBA. .295 batting average, can do a little bit of everything. Great matchup versus John Lester. Would not be surprised if he goes deep, similar to Manny Machado. And then a couple of shortstops here in this Philly and Chicago game. Javi Baez, I prefer him. He's $1,000 more expensive than Didi, but he's got plenty of power versus left-handed pitching. The guy strikes out half the time, but if he can make some contact, the ball should go pretty deep here versus Matt Moore. And then Didi, just a left-hand righty matchup here versus Zach Davies. His numbers aren't very impressive this season, but you kind of get what you pay for there. Then dropping down to the outfield, Nick Castellanos, $4,400. He's the only red we're going to talk about here, but I don't hate the righties versus Mike Minor. Only a 4.8 implied team total, which isn't bad, but compared to this slate, it's not going to look very good. It's actually the lowest that we've talked about so far. And probably once the Padres comes out, definitely still probably going to be the lower one because I'd imagine the Padres are going to be above 5 today. But Castellanos has been one of the best players in baseball this season in terms of just raw hitting. Like, he's batting .348 with a .423 WOBA and a .251 ISO and a .168 WRC+. And his numbers versus lefties get even better. Like, he's looking like Nelson Cruz in the past versus lefties this season with a .348 batting average, .273 ISO, some overall really, really good numbers. So Castellanos, don't hate him in tournaments, but probably not going to get there in cash games. Dropping down to Bryce Harper here. Like, I'd rather play Bryce Harper in cash games over Nick Castellanos just because, like, the Phillies overall better than the Cincinnati Reds, but it's a pretty good matchup versus Zach Davies as well. Tommy Pham, Will Myers, both guys are a good place for the Padres. I'm going to guess their team total is about 5 today, and both guys grade out pretty well versus lefties. Will Myers is around $1,000 cheaper than Tommy Pham, but if you got the money for Pham, I'd obviously prefer him, but it's going to depend on your roster construction. Or if you're just stacking the Padres, you should probably try to get both in, but both guys have fine numbers versus left-handed pitching. Andrew McCutchen, Odubel Herrera, just both outfielders for the Phillies that I like quite a bit in both this game, and also just realized that his team total is not showing here, but yes, like McCutchen and Herrera quite a bit, and especially Herrera leading off left and righty matchup versus Zach Davies. And then Jake Marisnick, $2,600, should be hitting in a decent spot in the order, and is already on lefty matchup here versus Matt Moore, and he's got plenty of pop versus lefties. So far this season, he's batting .355 versus them, .194 ISO, .175 WRC+, and a .444 OBP. He does strike out quite a bit, but just cheap power upside in the game with the wind blowing out, and they have a team total close to 6 here, so I could see Marisnick being quite chalky, try to fit in some more expensive bats throughout the rest of your lineup. But with that being said, guys, I think that'll be it for the video, so I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and you can follow me over on social media if you feel like that's something you'd like to do. And if it helps support the channel, over on Patreon, link is down below in the description for that, for projections, optimizer rankings, and a number of other stuff, Discord community. Link is down below, but I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July, and I'll see you guys in the next video.